Good morning, sisters. Good morning from a Sunday morning here in Chiang Mai, Thailand. And I'm coming to you today to bring a message that, to bring through some guidance that's been downloading to me, basically. And the themes are around, I actually made notes because there's a lot of pieces I want to weave together as I like to do. Um, Guilt, sin, and the dissolving constructs within our minds as we bridge between the old world and the new. So that's the basic theme here. And as always, I'd like to begin with a few breaths just to get connected. Let you get connected with your own self, your own receptivity, if you will, and get connected with the energy here to receive this for your highest good, if it is in accordance with your highest good. So just taking a moment. If it's safe to do so, you can close your eyes. If you're listening to this while doing other things, just attune yourself to your own breath and your heart, breathing into the heart space, opening to become more available for this present moment, and exhaling to release the busyness of the mind, the other aspects of your day that you'll attend to after this gathering. And again, breathing in, opening, expanding into a greater awareness and stillness with the breath, exhaling to settle in more deeply into this present moment and acceptance for what is now. One more breath. And exhaling, you can open your eyes. Thank you. I just think maybe I need to adjust the light here. Let me just see if I take my little light, bring it over here, if that helps a little bit. There we go. Okay, again, good morning. It is 6:30 a.m. here, so you could see it's getting lighter behind me. And let me just feel into where I want to enter this into this. So again, this is about, where'd I lost my notes? Guilt, sin, and the dissolving constructs within us. Okay, so yeah, I know where I want to begin. I'll begin with a story of a dream that I kind of snapped out of last night. So I had difficulty sleeping last night, and I kept finding myself in that liminal, or what I call the weird space between wake and sleep. I don't know if you've ever had any opportunities to sort of spend time there, but sometimes you can sort of observe what's going on, or certain situations will wake you back up, at least for me. So I had a number of those last night, and I felt like I was getting downloaded with transmissions, information, guidance. One in particular, though, kind of really snapped me out of what would have otherwise been a drift off into sleep. And the best way I can describe it is the awareness of a man, a male authority figure, almost king-like, calling me to him to account for something I'd done wrong. And I woke up and I was like, oh, I knew that feeling at a very deep level. A feeling of, I'm in trouble, but I didn't do anything wrong. I'm in trouble, but I didn't do anything wrong. But I nonetheless am about to face punishment for a sin, for guilt that isn't mine. And you could say, well, Dawn, maybe that just had to do with your childhood. Maybe it did. Not that I had a particularly traumatic childhood, but maybe it did. But I feel like I was tapping into a collective energy here. And so I just kind of sat with it for a little bit, and then I went off into, trying to sleep again, basically, which eventually came over time. But this morning when I woke, I was like, so, okay, what was that about? Was that personal? Was that collective? What was that about? And I immediately got the IRS. Because I live a fairly free life. I mean, I don't have anyone doing this to me. Of course, this has been one of my big lessons in my life. I was incarnated into a family and adopted into a family that very much carried this, moral judgment energy as Catholics, and really being the sort of, the sinners who cast the first stone nonetheless. And that was part of my soul's lesson and learning. But other than, like that's one of my big soul lessons that I'm working on in this life. So I'm like, no, what is this about? Where do I feel like I'm being controlled? I'm like, my life is pretty free. I'm grateful. I'm grateful. I don't have an angry husband. I don't have a paternal, my father is now this sweet little old man. So even the stuff that he embodied when I was younger, I've done a lot of forgiveness work around it too. So where is it? And I was like, the IRS. Where are we, and I'm speaking as an American, but I realize that, there are women all over the world in this community, but we all have this common denominator, this tax system. So I was like, that's where I feel this energy of like, come here. Even though, I didn't do anything wrong, I am obliged to pay for a system that oppresses me, that poisons the air, the earth, the water, the fire, all of this stuff. Now, there are ways to get out of it. I realize that. But until we figure that out, and do our own homework and decide we're going to commit to that, we're still under that thumb. So I was like, okay, so let's go deeper here with this now. And this is what I want to invite all of you to reflect into. Because this community, and I'm speaking now specifically to my private Return of the Priestess community, and I may put this on YouTube too. But this community, many of us have done a great deal of inner work. We've done a great deal of forgiveness work. We've done a great deal of facing our shadows. Some of us are newer to it, and that's great. That's perfectly okay. This message is going to land for you either way. When we do what's called our shadow work, we are bringing that which is hidden in the psyche, hidden in beneath the level of conscious awareness, to the surface to be cleared, released, or you could say integrated, forgiven. And as we do that, what we're doing is we are literally deconstructing the inner constructs of control within us, the inner constructs of limitation, and of things like guilt and the belief in sin and punishment. So in the Course in Miracles, Jesus teaches that there's a belief in sin, and sin believes, if you have sin, you have to believe in punishment. But the true nature of our reality is that we are lost in form. We're having a dream of separation. We have not sinned. We have merely erred. We have made an error. An error needs correction. So we're taking off the lens, the goggles of sin and punishment when we study the Course in Miracles, and we're putting on the lens of error, mistaken judgment, misunderstanding of the nature of where we are. And therefore, all that's needed is correction. That's why you hear these sayings like, you are forgiven before you sin. Because God does not judge and punish us. This is, when we think about the Bible, for example, and I'm speaking now for the Western mind, the Judeo-Christian Western mind, when we think about the Old Testament, the Bible, the New Testament, we have a punishing God. And the New Testament in particular, although it's the teachings of Jesus, these were a mix of the truth that Jesus was bringing and teaching at that time as an ascended, awakened master in form, with the woven in with the stories of men who have not woken up, who were deeply steeped in beliefs in sin and punishment. This is why that text, and I am no Bible scholar, so I'm not talking about it from that level of awareness. That text takes people down the garden path into beliefs in guilt and shame and punishment, and And those inner constructs, they're external constructs without, because they're reflecting internal constructs within. And so, what the Course in Miracles does when you do the lessons over time and read the book over time is they deconstruct the false beliefs that God made this world. God did not make this world. That's why it's so confusing to us. It's like, why would God make a world of such suffering? Because God didn't make this world. God made us in her likeness and image as holy divine beings. And we fell, we imagined, we dreamed, we fell from grace in the wondering what would it be like to create without God, which is love, without love. And therefore we created constructs within us. And I'm simplifying something that was vastly complex over some infinite millennia of now moments. We created constructs within us of guilt and punishment and sin and all of that. And so we see that outside of us. So in this time of the Great Awakening, we are dissolving the old constructs of oppression, of hierarchy. And that means it's not just like, oh, we're seeing the crimes against humanity out there in the world and deconstructing them. They have to be deconstructed within us. They have to be dissolved, healed, forgiven within us. And that creates destabilization in a psyche that has done no shadow work, in a psyche that is so fused is the word that's coming to mind in the vision I'm getting, fused with the constructs of guilt, sin, punishment, and hierarchy, that the dissolving constructs at an energetic level cause destabilization. Hence, we have what we call ascension madness, and we see it more and more around us. The latest kooky thing I've seen, and I don't know if this is just a joke or what, because I'm outside of the US, but this idea, there's all of these ideas now of uh, cultural appropriation, and that braids, like, when you braid your hair, is now a cultural appropriation. I mean, this is madness. This is madness at a level that cannot be articulated for those whose psyches are fused with the constructs of hierarchy, domination, sin, punishment, guilt, all of that. So we in this community, whether we are fairly new to shadow work or not, if you're in this community, you're at a level of soul evolution and soul intention to rise above that and to resolve and heal at a level that will allow you to hold more light in support of your own awakening and in support of your sisters and brothers as we go through this transition. We are the transition team. I've talked about that before. Those of us who were born into the constructs of the old paradigm of hierarchy, guilt, shame, control, limitation, and who are healing ourselves enough to hold the field for the awakening for our sisters and brothers, for ourselves. So as this transition team, we have to allow all of these constructs to dissolve within us as well. And so what might that look like? Well, that's going to look like your life deconstructing on different levels. It's going to look like characters and people coming into your life to create challenges for you that bring up the old beliefs that were once fused to the constructs that are now deconstructing. So, for example, one of the sisters here in this community, and I know you'll know who you are, we were just having a conversation on Messenger, and then I was voice messaging you too about guilt, right? And for you, this came up as a character in your life that you had to, for your own well being, and other sisters, I know you're going to relate to this, that's why I'm sharing it. You had to remove them from your life because they were becoming an energetic parasite. And this is one of the ways this can show up. And this is about us setting clear and healthy boundaries, because as women whose psyches were born into the constructs of hierarchy, guilt, shame, blah blah blah, we were often conditioned to be the doormat for others, to put everybody else's needs before us, no matter how much of an energy vampire they were. To, as empaths, male or female now, empathic beings, coming in wanting to help, to serve, to heal, allowing ourselves to engage in narcissistic relationships because we thought we could help them. All of that stuff now is coming up to be healed and cleared. So for some of us, we're dealing with guilt around, or guilt around being a bad person in the world, whatever, thinking we're a bad person. For others, it's guilt around having to set boundaries with people who have been sucking us dry. So those are two ways that the guilt can show up, but it's going to show up in, your, this is why I love evolutionary astrology, and this is why I still do evolutionary astrology one-on-one readings, to help people find those, what are the soul constructs that you came to dissolve, to heal and grow beyond? What are the patterns that are manifesting in your life that come from incarnational, habitual behaviors that you want to resolve, heal, and evolve beyond? Because that shows us where your life will mirror the things, the constructs of hierarchy, oppression, control, limitation, the old paradigm, the 3D matrix, are you where you are dissolving them within you, and the choices you need to make, and the way you need to reframe what you're experiencing, so that you could with grace and ease dissolve those constructs within yourself, and therefore not have to keep dealing with them in the outer world of your life. So that's like just a little astrology side there, but that is the point, right? This time of great light pouring onto our planet is not allowing the shadow of the old 3D matrix constructs within and without to continue to exist in this realm. So if we just fight against the old, and we don't, so we say we see the truth of what's going on, and we're a truther, and we're in the battlefield trying to, tell everyone what's really going on and get rid of these oppressive constructs of lying and control and war and all that stuff, but we don't do the inner work ourselves. We're going to still have, I would call it psychic destabilization. And depending how just psycho-spiritually whole you are to begin with will determine how destabilized you get. And this can be seen in astrological transits to your personal planets in your chart, outer planet transits to your personal planets. So again, that astrology piece helps me with one-on-one clients. But whether you work with me or someone else or not, the thing I would love for you to take away from this is, as we live through the transition and hold the field as priestesses for this transition, those outer constructs of domination, control, guilt, shame, war, hatred, attack that are dissolving, that are coming into the light of revelation for the masses to see, they're also dissolving within us, and they're being asked to be seen. So for me, as a Sagittarius South Node, one of the things that I've had to dissolve, and we do it at different levels of consciousness. So we keep going around, spiraling around the same themes and heal them at deeper levels of being. So for me, the theme of self-righteous judgment, the belief in judgment, the belief in sin, and punishment, guilt, all of that is healing at deeper and deeper levels. So again, where did I find it last night was in this liminal state between wake and sleep, where all of a sudden there was a man standing at a doorway calling me to answer for some sin I didn't commit. And that's an inner construct, that's within me. And so we all have them. They're characters that play out in our outer life. And when we start to clear those up more, we'll go to deeper layers of where the construction of belief in guilt, sin, separation from God, all of that are still fused. And where we need to heal them at the inner level. Okay, so let's take a pause. I'm pouring out a lot here. Take a breath. Reflect into at this point what's arising for you, what awareness is about your own life, or what questions, what's not making sense for you here that I'm sharing. And please, you can pause this video and write it in the thread below so that we could unpack this at a deeper level, because I'm offering it to you from my personal lens of my personal experience, in the recognition that we all have different themes that we're working with. um, they all come back to a a belief in separation from God that we're clearing and healing, so that we can become more unified in our consciousness and with each other. So just pause, take a breath. What's coming up? And you could take a moment to write that in there as I look what else I want to talk about here, if there's anything else. Okay. Okay. All forgiveness is self-forgiveness. This is another Course principle, Course in Miracles principle. All forgiveness is self-forgiveness. And this is what we come to understand at a very deep level when we go deeper into the Course principles. That any character, any person outside of us who's creating situations that require forgiveness in our life, forgiving them is deeply tied with forgiving ourselves, because they are just actors in our play. And so when we go deeper into the awareness that we are creating all of it, we realize that we place characters in our lives to reflect back to us these deep, fused with the 3D matrix belief, a construct within. They are just showing us aspects, beliefs within ourselves. And as we heal and dissolve and forgive those beliefs, forgive ourselves for creating havoc in our own lives at a level that was subconscious, that was not conscious. This is not about blaming the victim. This is a much deeper level. This is a deeply spiritual level of understanding things. When we see that they are but an actor in our play, that we are eternal divine beings having a dream of separation, always loved by God, when we identify with that self, not the victim of external crimes and sins against us, when we identify with ourselves as the higher being that we are, then we can say, look, there but for the grace of God go I. Look at this, look at what I've created in my life. Let me forgive myself for my own belief in punishment and suffering, that I may no longer attract these characters into my play, into my dream. So I realize that's a deep concept, and that if you are new to these principles, if you're new to the principles of non-duality, that this might come actually be offensive to you. And so that then is your forgiveness work right now, because at the deepest level, and all the great masters of this planet historically, and even those who awaken in form now, even if they're not achieving at that high level of Christ consciousness, they come to understand that there's only one of us here, that this is a dream of separation. And it is in the guilt of the dream of separation that when we forgive that, this is now a Course principle, when we forgive that within ourselves, then the world can become a happy dream for us. And there are layers and layers until we become Christed in our consciousness and see all things as light. We have not completed our work. And so let us be gentle with ourselves. That's the next piece. Let us be gentle with ourselves and gentle with the world, because this is a dream we are having. And if we continue to crack the whip on ourselves or on others, judging them for their sins and crimes and high crimes and misdemeanors, we will judge ourselves as well, and we will suffer. So let us be gentle with ourselves and remember that we have been through a tremendous amount. We have been living, many of us, maybe not all of us, I know there are star seeds here who have come from other realms who are new, who are not carrying as much karma. But many of us who are here have lived long incarnations in what is known from the East as the Kali Yuga, the era of war and judgment and deep separation from that which we know as God, the God light of love that is deep within us. So we have to be gentle with ourselves at this time. We have to be kind to ourselves. We have to recognize when we feel guilt or shame or attack thoughts towards self or others, to forgive ourselves, to be gentle, to recognize that we have been deeply steeped in a traumatic experience. I like to watch. I like to watch ancient history. It's just I'm kind of a history geek. I like ancient ruins and it's just something that I've done, but for a long time now. But the history as we know it, for the most part, especially things you watch on YouTube, which I do sometimes, is the history of Kali Yuga, of the deep ancient, uh, you know, description of the darkest, the deepest, the most separate from God period of, I'm not sure how long, 20, it could be 26,000 years, it could be more than that. So we have inklings and vague rememberings of higher civilizations. We even have evidence of, structural evidence of higher civilization in some of the great monuments of this world that were clearly built not by slaves with, you know, caveman tools. That's a whole nother conversation. But we don't have stories and historic references to a time of a higher civilization for the most part. We have some channeled stuff, etc. But when we look at typical ancient history in the mainstream, we're looking at the history of the Kali Yuga, the history of war, the history of suffering and oppression, and the rise and fall of civilizations that were basically, many of them, built on warring and domination. So let us be gentle with ourselves, knowing that our recent history has been one of incarnations of 3D matrix domination and control. And for us to live in this time of transition and hold the field, we have to clear the constructs that have been, the belief constructs, the inner psyche constructs that have been fused with that 3D matrix, so that we don't collapse with the 3D matrix, so that we can hold the field for our sisters and brothers. And we have to also be more loving and kind to ourselves in the remembrance, identify with the higher self, with the God child, the love light soul that we are beyond this dream. When we identify with that, we will treat ourselves with great reverence and great care in the recognition that we are the children of God, that God created us in her likeness and image. And in so doing, we dreamed separation and created a world that now is seeming the antithesis of God. In fact, we have characters afoot on this planet who are very clearly showing themselves now as anti God forces, creating demonic, presenting their demonic dreams and fantasies. And again, that's our collective out projection of this deep belief in separation. And so we are getting ready to rise from the dregs of an old society. And our gentleness as priestesses holding the field, we are doing so much work, so we must be gentle with ourselves because we're holding the field for sisters and brothers. We are learning to set boundaries because we have been empaths, and that's not working for us to let them walk all over us. We are remembering who we are. We are dissolving internal fused constructs that have psychic, internal constructs within our psyches that have been fused with the 3D matrix. And We are walking through this dense 3D realm, doing things like paying taxes and dealing with our children and our families and negotiating nonsense in this world that has become, anti-life at all levels, from the poisons in the food and the air to a medical system completely out of control to an education system that's indoctrinating our children into insanity, to micro fine differentiations creating more racism, more hatred, and more separation. So let's be gentle on ourselves because we're handling a lot. We are handling so much right now that it is essential that we be kind and loving to ourselves, because that is the godlight energy. That is the divine mother energy who has come to awaken within us, that we may feel the the loving presence of our creator within our hearts once again, and emanate that into the field for all of life. That's where we are right now. So being kind, being gentle to ourselves, and also having that warrior spirit of the will to look at our shadows and to clear them from a place of loving compassion for ourselves, of patience, and fierce love that says, I will look at my shadow and I will forgive it and release it and clear it, and I will do what it takes, whether that's working with a practitioner, whether that's creating a sacred practice, whether that's relinquishing friends who are sucking me dry and forgiving myself and not letting myself feel guilty about that. These are all the possible ways that we are being called to rise at this time. So I invite us to take another breath now. Pause this if you need to reflect on this as I take another look at my notes. Um, yeah, I've said everything pretty much I want to say, except um, just to reiterate this concept of the internal judge and dominator. So in this 3D matrix, we've lived in a matrix of domination and control, and all of our systems, the constructs, the internal and external, are based on that. The dissolving of them is destabilizing, as I said. But one of the things that we can use this window of time now, so I'm going to get really specific about when I'm recording this. I'm recording this during a waning moon. We just had a full moon a couple of nights ago, during a waning moon before the winter solstice in the Northern Hemisphere. So this is the perfect time for us to really have a look at our internal judge and dominator. She who within us is judging self and others and dominating self or others. I know if you're listening to this, you're probably not dominating others much, but you might be. You might look at how you're um, using certain patterns of behavior to get what you want. Women, often it comes out sideways. We learn how to manipulate because many of us who were born in the deep throes of patriarchy were not allowed to go direct with our power, so we learned how to do things sideways. So we can just look at that, and maybe often it's the dominator of self. I shouldn't do that. That's not, oh, I really, really want to do that, but I'm being called. I'm so curious. I'm desirous to do this thing, and then we dominate ourselves with, oh, the have tos, the shoulds. We should all over ourselves, or the guilt, or you weren't that good of a mother because you were too selfish with yourself, and therefore you don't deserve to do such and such now, or all of, again, these constructs within the self. So exploring where we need to do some healing work around our own internal judging others, judging self, or the internal dominator, dominating others, dominating self, with unhappy narratives around oppression and control. This is a good time, a window of time, to really look at, what do I want to release here? So we can use this time to, in prayerfulness, ask, please show me what I need to dissolve and heal and forgive next. Please show me what it is that I need to release within, whether that's the internal judge and dominator of self, or some other aspect of yourself that's not serving your own awakening. And then watch for the signs and be prepared for possibly a challenging situation to arise. It could be come in the form as a person, a character in your play coming to give you a challenge, and then ask for guidance. Please show me how this is a blessing, how this is a blessing and a gift for me to dissolve, to heal, to release that which is holding me down from my own rise in my light, my own greater happiness, my own capacity to live a happier dream. So, this is a great time for a burning ritual. If you know already what this is that you want to heal and clear, you can do a burning ritual. You can write it down and burn it, release it. You can do, if I've taught you the energy mantra, which I've taught somewhere, I forget which course, you can do the energy mantra. I embrace the mind of the such and such one. She has nothing to do with who I am, but she has served me well. She has. And then you acknowledge all the ways that that thing, that aspect of your personality you want to clear, has actually served to keep you safe or alive or whatever at the time. And then you release her from everywhere she's stored within you and send her back to source. So the energy mantra is another way to, another tool to work with during this window of time. So I really want to share my story of healing, but I think I'm going to do that in another video because this has already run, oh my goodness, 36 minutes already. Whoa, Nelly. Okay, so I'm going to wrap up for now and sending you each much love and bright blessings for this time. And really a deep bow of respect and honoring of your being here at this time, to hold the field, to be in the transition years, and to stand in this light of your own greater self with courage and love, to dissolve those constructs that no longer serve you within or without. Okay, sisters, mwah, much love for now. Have a blessed day.